So I was like, I want more.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I feel like every time I do something, I'm like, I want more.
Ma.
So it's just like, give me more.
Okay, Brittany.
Give me Moa.
Oh. Oh.
I mean, everybody wants to be me. I'm joking. I feel like a mother.
Okay, you saw the title already. You know what we're about to talk about. Let's get into it. So she is a Lagos-born British designer and singer, or a music maker, however you want to cut it. Born in March 25th, 1994, so she's 30 right now, right? Mowalola, her brand, was founded in 2017. She showcased shows for Fashion News for a few seasons, fall winter 2019, spring summer 2020, and then she took a hiatus from runway shows. She grew her online presence from there throughout the years with accessories like the famous, well, not famous, but a really hit Mowalola trucker hat in colors like blue and red, green and red, and pink and blue, I want to believe. And then she came back in spring summer 2023, and she did that show in Paris, and she's been showing in London ever since. Her brand signatures that I've recognized a lot include, okay, I'm gonna have to read off a list here. I'm gonna have to step away from y'all for a second. Lots of leather and PVC use, quote unquote erotic cuts. Now, when I say erotic, I mean erotic as in showing a lot of skin and harnessing previously established erotic features or erotic zones, like things that we know are erotic, showing lots of skin, low-waisted pants, lots of shoulder, erotic zones, even straight up nudity, which is not always in an erotic context, but nudity. Midriff from cropped pieces, that's kind of erotic, I guess. Cutouts in garments in specific places, the use of color to highlight erotic zones. Overall, just the silhouettes and cuts designed to accentuate and bring attention to conventionally sexual features or areas. That's all the things I have to say about like the eroticism of Mowalola. This really deep like burgundy, especially in like glossy leather that she uses in various garments, as she's been using over the years, even in her Fashion East days, I believe. So yeah, there's been an increase with fur experimentation. There's a lot of logo like spin-offs, like her own versions of popular logos that she does. Lots of brandishing her own name, her iconography on her clothing is really, really big. There's a lot of dirty or airbrushed like denim. Denim have like a airbrushed, almost like filter render type of effect, like PS2 type of effect. There's a lot of airbrush prints as well that she uses. She has a lot of sportwear influence and sportwear takes from different sports. And of course, the culture that she lives and breathes every day, the stuff that she interacts with and the stuff she's inspired by, which is heavily like street style club attire. And please take me serious when I say this, but like cuntiness, yeah. That's pretty much what I recognize to be the main parts of Mowalola's direct visual like presentation. Also, sorry if my mic like starts like I'm really sorry. I don't know what to do about it. It's horrible. I'm broke. I can't buy a new one. Please watch. But before we get any further, let me just break down one really, really important disclaimer. I am not going to be talking mainly about her personal life. I'm not going to be talking about who her dad is, who her mom is, if her dad is like a corrupt politician or what her mom owns. I'm not going to be talking about her upbringing and how rich she supposedly allegedly was. I'm not going to be talking about her alleged fiance, even though I'm just listing off things right now. But I'm not going to be trying to use that to talk about her clothes, okay? I'm more going to be talking about the noise that's around her, and not necessarily like the controversy either. Like, just the place that she's been put by, like, the people who actually do matter. At some point, I'm gonna have to address all of the other like controversy as well, because you can't really talk about her without talking about that stuff right now. But that's not the main focus, okay? That's not what I'm using to mainly judge my opinion, okay? So with that being said, let's get into what I think about her, right? Before we go any further, Mowalola is good. She is good. She has to be good to have gotten to this point. Anybody who's saying that she's not good is a hater, and I'm not saying that she's good because she got to this point and it's like automatically a given, but I do think she just straight up like has some really cool like her cuts, her use of materials, and the way how she sets everything up. Like I think it's cool. Like I think her clothes are literally not bad. Like they're not awful as some people will tell you. Like obviously she does fall short in design when it comes to the ebony or the N-word shirt or whatever, but like her clothes aren't bad, like for sure. And I've never handled them up close and personal with my, eyes and hands to figure out what the quality is talking about in terms of like the scenes and what the fabrics feel like or anything. But I think her visuals, like strictly off visuals, it does look compelling in some of the collections, especially the collection she had about, I think it was the first collection she had back on the runway, Burglary. I liked that collection. Like I thought it was sensually and visibly like appealing. Like I thought it was a bit, you know, solid. And I think Mowalola has that steady brand growth. Like she's grown and moved steadily as a brand, and it hasn't been bad. I don't know what her business looks like. I don't know if she's like lazy, as some people might say, or how she runs her business. But I know that her brand growth has been steady and smooth, and she has sold a lot of accessories. And direct to consumer has been nice to her, even though she's not 100% direct to consumer, or at least not anymore. But she's had a smooth path, like outside of all the noise that has been coming around her name for maybe the past year or so. Her path has literally been smooth. That leads me to the problem, right? I think she is the okay. Hear me out. Please don't click off when I say this. Please just hear me out. You have to hear me out. I think she is somewhat of a victim of perception by two main groups. I think the first main culprits that she would have to blame for maybe the overrated comments and the comments that she's nowhere near as good as Yellow making her seem are hungry, starving journalists. Now, when I say hungry, I don't mean money hungry or power hungry. I mean hungry in the sense that they're hungry to talk about a disruptor. They're hungry for groundbreaking young talent that's the new frontier that's changing the way how people perceive. Like, I think she's hungry for those type of people. I mean, the journalists, I think they're hungry for those type of people. I do think that Mowalola's good, but I think the journalists, because they're so hungry, they push her in conversations that she's not necessarily ready for or qualified for yet, in my opinion. I think there are lots of other designers that I don't know about, you don't know about, we don't know about, that these journalists can find because they have the resources to find them, and they're out there, of course. They might be in Turkey, they might be in Indonesia, they might be in America, but these journalists don't know how to find them. So they see somebody who is getting buzz from like maybe the streets, or maybe a certain designer, or just the scene in general, saying like, oh, that Moa Lola show was hmm. And because Moa Lola also has her disposition of, well, not disposition, like her stature of like a black woman in society, Nigerian, British, or whatever. And on top of that, she is speaking about things like women, black women, being a black person, the whole bullet hole dress and thing. Like, journalists took that and just, like, that whole fiasco with Naomi Campbell a few years ago. Naomi Campbell wore a bullet hole dress, and a lot of people instantly just slapped police brutality on it and called it a day. And then Mowalola came out and was like, no, let me set the record straight. This was talking about how it feels like no matter how you present yourself as a black person, you can be in the most beautiful, you can do yourself really well, and there's still always going to be a target on your back because you're black. And the way how everybody just took this and ran with this narrative without even getting confirmation from her is an example of like the starvation that these journalists have, because they're starving to talk about this girl, but they probably don't even understand where she's coming from or her references, and they also fill in the blanks for her and give her narratives and sometimes bail her out. They misinterpret her sometimes, but they do also bail her out and fill in the blanks for her. And I feel like a lot of what people have been doing as of late is filling in her blanks. And these journalists are so starving, they're gonna take this girl who has been making clothes since 2017, and she's been showing runway shows since, what, 2019, and they're gonna prop her as this, like, when you think about like disruptor and, oh, groundbreaking, they're putting her in conversations with people like McQueen and Margella and Miguel Drover. I'm not the one that's doing it. It's not like I'm not making up a problem and then solving it. This is something that's real. Like, it's real. Like, there are journalists who have done that, and there are other people who have gassed her up, but we're saving the other people for after this. Maybe I should look at what I wrote down. Maybe I'm off track. No, actually, I'm pretty on track. But the thing is, there are a lot of journalists who can't even speak on what she's talking about because they're so personal, and she has like lots of Nigerian references in her early work, and then later on, it's more of like you see the absolute like influence from club attire and street culture, in my opinion. And her take on sportswear, that's the sportswear takes aren't that hard to grasp. I just feel like when you're a journalist, you need to understand the power you have to make somebody be able to be regarded as critically acclaimed, because you basically say, oh, they're just, you have to be very careful with your words. And I feel like because journalists are so naturally like inflammatory and sensational, like they like to sensationalize a lot of fashion, they have put her in these heights and these conversations that have people ready to tear her down because they're looking at the critical acclaim and saying, hey, she's not nowhere near as good as they're saying. And I don't think she is, but I don't think that's a problem. I think everybody should just calm down, include like starting with the journalists. No, I think the other group of people who are guilty for perpetuating her to be this crazy, groundbreaking, fashion forward powerhouse who's making history with every collection. is like rich New York and London kids and rich Nigerian kids and influencers and artists who are basically given a chance to be a part of the universe. And I think it's just one big party. I think it's a fear of missing out thing where, because all of like legendary history in fashion and legendary moments in like entertainment in general are so well documented in the past, and people see how like those moments are created from the beginning. Now everybody wants to be able to recognize it from when it's just about to happen. So everybody tries to catch it as it happens so that they can say, I was there, I was a part of this moment. So a lot of these people who are around her are basically twerking for Mowalola and saying like, yo, Mowalola is the one. Mowalola, innovation, uh, 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 the new wave, the leader of the new generation. Like, I think y'all should also, I think it comes from like people not necessarily having a deeper knowledge of fashion history. Now that may come off as elitist, saying that, oh, because I know more than you, my discernment is better than yours. But I do think that if people were to look on some other designers, like say Alexander McQueen or Martine Rose or even like Kanye, or I said somebody else on this paper, Shane Oliver, who has done like work in the similar vein and lane that she has done. I think maybe when you revisit Mowalola after looking at some of them, you think twice about like just how amazing you think she is. Like, you know what I mean? Not to say that she doesn't deserve. You feel me? That's, I'm not saying that she's not good, but I'm just saying when you like these, when you put her name alongside these other guys and women, does she stack up? Like, I don't think, I think she can probably be in the conversation, but it would just have to be an a recognized understand. I recognize like, okay, maybe she's not as good as these guys, but she's having the same effect. I think she can have the same effect without being just as good. But I think when these kids are just so excited to be a part of something, it's like, you know, and everybody wants to be like around her, and like, you know, Mo Lola comes calling you, come answer. I think it's like just a tad bit of glazing involved. I know that's not very academic to like put it like that, but yeah, I'm gonna try and read off my book now because I actually wrote extensive notes. Oh yeah, of course, none of this is like really her fault. I mean, it does kind of like get to her head here and there, and you see like her ego problems and how she acts on social media. I think she'll be alright in that sense, but I think consumers have the power. Now hold on. I think the threshold for like groundbreaking innovative fashion is quite a bit easier to hit due to a general lack of fashion knowledge and seeing what really used to move the needle. I don't mean to sound elitist, I probably do, like an old head, but I think people could look at amazing work that's been done in the past. Da, 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 da. Now you can still 100% like her. Now you can still 100% like her version more than the other designers because it's more modern, it's now, and it's even the future. And despite similarities to all previously mentioned designers, she has her own distinct look to how she does things and what she does. And if her look is what you prefer, that's so valid. And actually, maybe it is elitist to say she's not as good as these other designers because who says she has to be? I think her look is just what it is, you know? I think she embodies the change in fashion going forward, especially, of course, in New York and London. A lot of it just is what it is. Now, it's what the new generation wants. The times are changing, and that's fine. If this is what the new generation of fashion consumers want, then that's literally it. That's what inclines these journalists to say what they say about her, and then these kids recognize critical acclaim as her being the absolute one, and they cheer her on as such. Do I think she's as brilliant as some of the other designers who have worked in the same lanes and veins of her? No. But does she have to be? No, because she's like not even a decade in. She's Mowalola, that's all there is. So maybe people should stop being so snobbish as hell and marvel at the changing landscape of fashion because love it or hate it, this is all so very interesting, or at least in my opinion, it is. And this is the direction that at least a certain place in the fashion world is going. So you need to pay attention because it's not going to change. It feels academically irresponsible to put it like this, but I think that the sexiness and cuntiness is at the forefront of Mowalola, and with clothes naturally becoming more like that in general, and consumers putting so much emphasis on looks due to the panopticon of social media. I think Mowalola is the one going forward to carry us into the future, and there's nothing anybody can do to stop it. Close book. That's all I wrote down. Okay, now in terms of what her actual clothes are like, I think a lot of people really don't like it because it's not conventionally what would be considered like runway material or like runway beauty. And that's where I think a lot of elitism comes in because people see like the skimpy, erotic, sexy, cunty, like clubbish type of attire that real people in the world like wear, and that's like also a part of like, you know, our culture or whatever. And they think, oh, you know, that's not very Like, what is this doing on the runway? This is like so tasteless and tacky. But it's like, no, this is a real part of like the lives of a lot of people. This is a real thing in the like. This is a real part of the world, and this is how people really do dress in certain areas. And she's putting that on the runway. I think there is a sense of reality to her clothing. Now, I don't think it's the most groundbreaking in terms of like the celebration of black people, like say how Martin Rose does it. I think it's a bit different where Martin Rose honors them in from a different time period, and Mowalola is kind of like honoring people from now, even though that is kind of like making narratives for her. But that's my interpretation. I'm not necessarily saying that that's what she's trying to do, but I think that's what it ends up being like, even indirectly from her subconsciousness. Because I really do think she's designing like the type of stuff that she sees and what she wants to see. What she wants to see. Oh my god! I think it's just another look for people that's being put on the runway, but because of how it's being presented, and it's not very respected in the real world anyway, because they're like, oh, where are you going looking like that? Like, that's what some of those looks elicit in my brain. And it's also very new and young, you know what I mean? I don't know if we're in like late stage social media or whatever in terms of like the digital era or whatever, but I feel like it's just also very current. Not to like try and bail her out, but I think going forward, like, this is a part of the world that is definitely getting put more and more on display. So I think people need to stop acting like it's this horrible thing for looks like that to be on the runway, and saying that, oh, this design is so tacky and tasteless. Like, no, I think the silhouettes and the cuts are something that should be considered. And I think the way how she's presenting it should be considered, and the use of the models. And I don't think she doesn't give a damn. And if it's not even her as a person, and if it's her team who's doing all this like heavy lifting, then like I'll say you need to give them, like, some people need to give them a little bit of actual respect, because they're not, I mean, they're overrated, but they're not bad. Now, with that being said, like, okay, yes, I guess she has a crazy ego, and yes, her man is a very questionable, Mr. 33 or whatever. And yeah, that's unfortunate that she is being associated with, bro. But even if you take all her ego out, like, I think she's very important. I think we need somebody like this to watch. And I think the fact that she's here is a good thing. I think whether you like her or hate her, you have to watch. Now, I've spoken about Mowalola, I've spoken about journalists. I need to talk about the consumer bar. I want to specifically lock in talking about the threshold. My fashion history, like, people don't really have fashion history. That's why they find her impressive. I'm not trying to sound elitist. I said this for like the third time. But I do think when you have a whole bunch of kids that are like, I think there's an element of wanting to be like considered somebody who can grasp like a revolution. Like, people want to be able to say, oh yeah, this is art and I understand it, So I feel like they put themselves in a, or put more Lola in that type of conversation to be able to say, oh yeah, I have knowledge in this conversation because I understand more Lola. That might be a reach, but I do think it's all just this big like I want in thing. So it's like anybody who's involved is just like, yes, you know what I mean? But in terms of consumers thinking that Mowalola isn't good or not, y'all have the power to like dictate the general like online consensus if you either stop running up discourse about her or make really critical like reviews on her clothes and think why, oh, this is bad or this is good or this is this or this is that. If people didn't buy her clothes, she wouldn't be able to, you know what I mean, get through the door. I think consumers have most of the power in terms of who gets through the door. But I think because the bar is so low, when you have a harder time discerning who's really, really good and who's really, really not, then anybody can just get let in because you don't know who's who. And then that's when the frauds come in. If you think Mowalola is a fraud, and this might sound like I'm projecting or throwing rocks and hiding my hand, but I'm not, because I don't think she's a fraud. But it's like, y'all have the power to like stop these people from kind of coming in to a certain extent. Y'all have the power to like make sure these people don't get through the door. If y'all just, lock in a bit more, do a bit more research on who she is and her brand. It's like, if y'all had more of a strong discernment, and if y'all really just didn't allow certain things to slide, the quality of what y'all would be getting it would be better, because it would be a lot harder to get through the door. That's what I've been trying to articulate for like the past 3 minutes. But if you don't stand, if you don't settle for certain levels of quality and what you consider to be mediocrity, then these people wouldn't be plaguing you. I mean, of course, you can only do so much, even as your own individual effort. But if you collectively pull together and say, hey, we need to stop, we need to demand more from whoever we are consuming or observing. We need to demand more from these people, because that's how the quality gets raised up. You can't just let anybody in through the door, because then you'll have just anybody designing or rapping or playing a sport So yeah, I kind of went off topic there, and this video honestly ended up being a lot more disjointed than I thought. I hope it ends up being good, but I'm gonna upload it anyway. Thank you for watching. I love criticism. I love feedback. I love having open discussions. If you think I'm right or wrong, if you have something to add, or if you have a little bit of pushback, please let me hear it, because I love smart people and I love talking to smart people and I love hearing new perspectives.